Good evening, everyone. This is Michelle here from To the Top. Thank you very much for joining our webinar tonight. I'm sharing my slide in the room. Let me just briefly go over my company's comprehensive admissions consulting. We have a special guest tonight. We're going to introduce her shortly, but let me first of all introduce my company. We have been in business for 8 years. We help students get into their dream colleges, and this is our comprehensive admissions consulting process. We start with assessment, and then planning, and then college search, where we come up with a college list. Pretty much we cover the safety, match, and reach tiers. And then we help students prepare their materials and test advising. And then we also guide them with college interviews and applications. And of course, the end result is to help them get into their dream colleges. And again, back to our college admissions process. Right now, we are still in the summer, so anywhere from summer to early fall, we begin working on application materials, and we also help our students solicit letters of recommendation from their high school teachers. And then once the school starts in the fall and winter time, we'll help them submit their applications. And usually it's from November 1st to February 1st. And then that's also when colleges conduct their interviews. And then some students will visit colleges. Of course, during the past year, due to COVID, that has become virtual visits. And then pretty much you just wait for results. But all year long, we help our students improve their test scores. We help them maintain their high grades in rigorous courses in high school. We really help them plan for college and beyond, their future career, their graduate schools. And to the top education, like what is our approach? And we really have this expert individual attention. We help we provide one-on-one counseling, mentoring, and coaching. And our application process is very customized. It's driven by students and their family needs and their specific goals. And of course, we are also international admissions experts. We work with a lot of international students, either from mainland China or within the US. They attend like some private high schools in the US. So we can advise them on their English proficiency requirements. We help them with their visa and OPT guidance. And our company is used to remote setting. We have very robust, flexible communications. And of course, we have deep cultural understandings. Our team is fully bilingual. We can easily translate between Chinese and American cultures. And as I said earlier, we provide educational consulting really anywhere from middle school to PhD applications, and then all the related services like tutoring, test prep, career consulting. So let's talk about the college applications. Really, what are the materials you need for your college applications? You need your personal statement, you need your supplemental essays, you need your extracurricular activities list, your test scores, even though a lot of schools are test optional, some of them still look at your test scores, and then your high school transcripts, very, very important, and letters of recommendation. So speaking of the materials, I just want to do a quick commercial. So we have ACT test prep that's going on right now. It's our second session, so it's a SAT bootcamp. So we have ACT verbal taught by Jared Friedland, and the ACT math teacher is Mr. Kevin Lu. So we are still accepting registrations. And then the next one is really for AP preview courses. And the English language just started today, but we are still accepting registration, so you can still join us. And in part of this college counseling, we just started offering this summer is private college counseling. It's an economy plan really targeted at students who really want to do this themselves, but we are still going to help them with some questions they need. So like we have private school college counselors, and they can help them manage like up to 5 colleges, and then we can meet with them 5 times. So speaking of which, we want to introduce a special counselor with us tonight, and her name is Carol M. Barber. She is a college counselor, a former management consultant, and executive recruiter. So she has extensive experience working for Fortune 500 companies. And she received her bachelor's degree from Colgate University and MBA from Boston College. As a mother of 4, she's helped her 3 sons get accepted at Harvard University and her daughter at Colgate University. With a passion to coach youth on their college and career, Carol Ann became a college and career consultant focused on college admissions and career coaching. She's currently working on her college counseling certificate through UCLA. And I want to make this interactive. So during this interview, if you have any questions, you can actually type in chat, and I'll be monitoring that. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing right now. And so I want to welcome you, Carol. Do you want to say hi to our audience?
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so wow, thank you so much really for joining us tonight to share your experiences and your wisdom really with our audience. As you know, Chinese families really care so much about their kids' education. Ivy League is always everybody's dream. And then on top of that is Harvard University. So I want to start my questions really from a bird's eye view at a very high level, and then we'll drill down into more details. So
Okay.
really on a very, very high level, what is your parenting philosophy? So do you consider yourself a tiger mom? I'm sure you've heard of tiger mom.
I have heard of the tiger mom. I don't feel like I'm a tiger mom, but I definitely had really high expectations for the kids. Each of our 4 kids had the freedom to really find their passions and follow their passions. I didn't micromanage their academic work in school. And I thought about that. I think a lot of it is because we actually have a big family. We had 4 kids. So you're very scattered and you can't necessarily know exactly what each one is doing in the classroom, but you can keep the communication open and really have a pulse on whether they're having trouble or they're not having trouble, whether they're succeeding. I mean, one of the things my husband and I talked about today is that we always told them they were in control of their effort. And that really was the key for us, is that, if they didn't necessarily succeed, they would learn from that. And it was really their effort that they put forth that was really important. The other thing that I've always said is that when the kids were little, I felt like we were their primary teachers. And by that, I meant like we exposed them to different museums, to the arts, to arts and crafts, to cooking, whatever it might be. And like we read every night to the kids. And I think that's really important. It kind of fosters that sense of curiosity. And then as they get older and they go into middle school and high school, you need to take a step back, because the teachers and the classroom and their peers were really their primary, where they were learning. And just to give you an example of that, I wasn't going to teach them physics, or I wasn't going to teach them AP literature. That was happening in the classroom. And I think that we just supported that effort, but it's a shift in parenting. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes, yes. And I really resonate with your philosophy. I feel like, first of all, parents are really our children's first teachers, and
Mm-hmm.
they really learn from us, right? We need to set a good example. Actually, we want to back up a little bit about your 4 children. Can you
Yeah.
just tell us about like their age difference?
So our oldest, there's 8 years from top to bottom, but the first 2 are closer in age. They're 21 months apart. And then our middle 2 actually are exactly to the hour 3 years apart. They were born on the same day in the same
Wow.
hospital with all the same doctors and nurses. And then there's 3.5 years from to our youngest.
Okay.
So
So and then you pretty much applied the same method, right? So actually that is a good segue to my next question, right? Like, so you got 4 children, and you mentioned, how you help them form some good habits from early age. But
mhm.
then the 4 of them, like, are they different or are they similar?
Oh, they're all different, but we did some similar things, right? Where, we read every night to bed, going to bed. We had definite routines that we kept to. We took them with us. We believed in traveling with them or taking them with us. They were all involved in organized sports from a very young age. And I think that's fairly typical, at least here, where we live in the Bay Area. And then we did a lot of, I love arts and crafts. And I think your point about being a role model is really important. I love to cook. I love to do arts and crafts. We all love to read. And showing them that we love these things as well, I think fosters that. If you're Each one of our kids really found a different passion, I'd say, and they're all very different. I know we had talked about some other questions, but I'm going to dive into that if that's okay.
Yes,
Our oldest picked up a video camera when he was in 7th grade and just fell in love. And he'd always been a very good writer. And so for him, he was really passionate about film. And he was extremely lucky because his teachers in high school actually let him follow those passions, where instead of writing a paper, he had some classes where he actually presented the final project as a film. And that's pretty incredible to be able to do that. Our second oldest was a musician. He was a lead singer in a band, and they cut a CD. He sang classically and then he sang rock. And really, his focus was music as communication. He's also really academic in terms of math focused. But I think that really was his passion, music. And then our third actually is our daughter is ADHD. And I think that definitely impacted her learning as she grew into high school. And then our fourth really identifies as an athlete. So all 4 were so different.
wow. So actually that reminded me. So they all grew up in the Bay Area, and what kind of high schools did they attend?
So the kids went public school from kindergarten through 8th grade. And then they graduated from private high schools.
Ah, okay, okay. So was there any reason why you did that?
There was. For our oldest 2, they really could have gone to public or private. I think it was just that my husband had gone to this particular private school in Oakland, and it was between the public school or the private school. So that was that decision. With our third, because of her learning differences, the teachers at the middle school really felt that she would benefit from small class size. So we broadened our search and looked at 3 or 4 schools with her. And then our fourth, once you go down that path, it's difficult to pull back because it is a different environment, and he wanted to follow in the footsteps of his brothers and his sister.
Okay, yeah. Well, so thank you for actually opening. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't think that people have to feel that you have to go to private school, though, to get a good education, right? Like, it just so depends on your child, the circumstances, where you live. And really the key is to get the best education you can where you are and put forth that effort.
Right. Let me ask you this then. So in terms of parents' involvement, would you say parents need to be more involved if their kids attend a public school?
That's an interesting question. I actually don't think it matters. I really think it's the individual student and the communication with the parent versus where they are, because each child is different.
Yeah, that is very true. So then in terms of your interacting with your children, right, when you raise them, like how did you praise them versus criticize them? Did you criticize them at all?
I had to think about this question. When they did a good job, I know we always reinforce that behavior. Like, even on the athletic field, good play or good sportsmanship, or when a paper was great or a grade was great, what a good job. But then again, each child is different, right? So I remember a conversation with our oldest, who was highly academic. At one point he said, how come if I don't get an A, but my sister, who's ADHD, gets a B, you praise us differently, right? Like, you say, that's awesome, Kate, and you could do better, your effort. So I think, and what we talked about was that you're just different, like your inherent abilities and how hard someone has to work really depend on that individual student and what they're facing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's important to realize as a parent. And then the other thing I thought about is that failure and mistakes really build resilience and grit. And I think sometimes we forget just how resilient kids are. And they really are resilient, and they learn. One example I thought about that was, once again, our oldest was in middle school, and he wanted to talk at the graduation ceremony that they have at the end of 8th grade. And he signed up for the speech. You had to present your speech to try out. And he signed up, and I remember, he said to us when he was doing it, I think when we drove to school that day, we talked about it, right? Mm-hmm. And then I picked him up after lacrosse practice, which was probably right before dinner. And I said, how did it go? And he's like, oh my God, I forgot. So that was a learning. Like, there was nothing we could do. And since he forgot, he wasn't able to participate in that. He wasn't able to be a speaker. And he is such a good writer, and he's a very good speaker. He was always involved in musical theater, and he also sang in a band. And it would have been great, but he really learned from that experience, right?
Yeah, that is very true. I have some questions in the audience. So one is, did you have a plan for your kids to go to Ivy League?
No, not at all. In fact, TJ, the oldest, actually got into USC film, NYU film, Wesleyan, Chapman, UCLA. Like, he was really focused on film. And so when he was doing his college search, he only looked at schools that had some form of film programs. And he ended up really making his decision between USC and Harvard. And, you know, sometimes I'm sure, I think he had a phenomenal experience in education at Harvard, but I'm sure that there's times where he wonders, well, where would I be if I went to USC, right?
So
No,
if he ended up
hate
not
that
pursuing
at
fields
all.
at Harvard, he majored in something else at Harvard.
He actually majored in film.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah. And then a minor in computer science.
Okay. And there's another question for you. How did you help your daughter to follow the rules and disciplines and such?
So Kate it was interesting because when she was younger, her teachers identified that there was definitely a learning difference. And even in kindergarten, she had a hard time learning to read. She was pulled out for reading in first grade. So we'd been trying to figure it out. But by fourth grade, we knew there was something. And her third grade teacher said she's not dyslexic. Like, the teachers were searching. And we had a meeting with the school district, and the district said she was too high performing for them to send her for testing. So we ended up having her tested outside of the school district, and they identified her as ADHD. And we are lucky because we're in a smaller town and in the Bay Area. And so they gave her accommodations without a 501c3, without the IEP and the 501.
Oh, IEP, right.
Right. So she did have like longer tests, like they pulled her out to take a test. And then by the time she was in high school, we decided with the psychologist who had tested her, suggested executive functioning coaching. And so she started working with someone in 9th grade. And really, they gave her the toolbox to succeed in high school and college.
Wow.
She's very structured, and she takes a very low dose of her ADHD meds. And when you're young, she was, we're in Kaiser. We were in Kaiser. We're not now, but they believe in, if you're ADHD, you go through different group meetings, and you have therapy appointments, and her medication is a very low dose. So, and then with the toolbox from the executive functioning coach, she's great. She's working, and she manages her own ADHD, and she has since she was young. Like, she really understands it, and she's incredibly open about it, which I think is key.
How old was she when she started on the medication?
4th grade. Wow. And it takes a little bit of time to figure out what works and what doesn't. And we had to work with the medical team to work that out.
Yeah, well, more questions from the audience. Does college care about your high school class, or should I do more AP, or just what I like? So I guess the question is, right, does college care about
rigor
taking in high school, right? Should I go for AP classes, or should I pursue what I really like?
Right. I think there's a fine balance to that. The colleges, when they're looking at an application, they look at the rigor of someone's class during high school. That being said, I think it's also important to follow what you're interested in. So one of the things we've talked a lot about in my networking groups is that if you have a student who really doesn't want to study a particular subject, they shouldn't necessarily be pushed into that AP. However, you do want to take advantage to what your school offers in terms of rigor and APs. So I think it's just a fine balance, and I'm sure you would say the same.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. All I was going to add is that don't take a class just because you think that that's going to help you get into college.
Right.
Really follow
Right.
your passion.
Exactly.
And then another question for you: how did your kids study for the SAT?
That's another individual question. Our oldest didn't. He just, I think he looked at one of the books, the Barron's SAT book, and did a couple tests. So that was TJ. And what we talked about with him was if he actually, needed it, we would look at tutoring. With our second oldest, he took the test the first time and was so nervous that he felt like he didn't do as well as he could have. And he did do individualized tutoring before the next.
Oh, so it was one-on-one tutoring.
Right, one-on-one. Okay. And then with Kate, she did do one-on-one tutoring because that was the best way for her to succeed. Okay. And she took the ACT, not the SAT.
Oh, okay.
And then Christopher also did one-on-one tutoring.
Oh, so the oldest one really just taught himself.
Except for the oldest.
Right, your oldest one. Wow, okay.
But I think that just depends, again, on your child. And I think right now that there's so much debate with test optional.
Mm-hmm. Right. But most Chinese families still don't believe in test optional. So it's like, okay. I know. Yeah, we all still take our SAT. Here's another question. So did you let your kids choose their college major, or you actually had some preferred majors for your kids?
No, they all they all chose their own majors. Our family is very open though. So we talked about it, but they definitely chose their own major.
So how about the school list? Did the family come together and discuss the school list, or you just let your kids decide?
So our kids really did their own lists. I think we helped them, guide them, but they did do their own lists. And we did college visits. So, with Kate, she knew she wanted small classroom and an East Coast small liberal arts school. At first, she wanted just to go to college in Connecticut, and then she broadened her search to be New England and kind of mid-Atlantic. So when we did her college search, it was just small liberal arts. At the end of her week, there were a couple things. She said 2,000 was too small. 3,000 over 3,000 was too big. So she knew she wanted between
that's very narrow.
2 and 3. And she played volleyball, so she could have played potentially at a D3, but she loved Colgate, and Colgate is actually a D1 sport school. So she ended up just playing club, and she applied ED to Colgate.
Okay. Actually, that reminded me. So your youngest one played sports. Mm-hmm. Did he get in Harvard through sport recruitment?
He didn't. He's plays volleyball, but he's a defensive player, and so typically for men's volleyball recruits, they're going to recruit the 6'6" or front.
Okay. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to talk about when looking back to good habits or when kids are younger, one other commitment that we had was to a family dinner. And I think that really fosters that communication. So our family is very open. They're used to that, like telling each other different things. Like the grades in college or grades in high school or what was happening for the day. So that family dinner, I think, was really, really critical.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. I can totally relate to that. Like, when I was raising my daughter, I also I read to her every night, right?
Right.
Bedtime stories, and then we ate dinner every night together. So your family did the same thing, I assume.
We
Uh,
did.
yeah, that is not an easy thing to do. And
It wasn't easy, and some people wouldn't have done what I did, but I gave them snacks like when they were little, because Tom's a surgeon, he was often late. So we would, sometimes we would have dinner all together at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and everyone did it. Like we went around his schedule so that we could all be together. And
wow.
yes, we missed some because of
Mhm.
sports or an on-call night or whatever the case might be.
Mhm.
I
But
think
for the most part, right, you would
right,
eat together as a family.
right.
Yeah, that is really something missing in a lot of families now, because we live such a hectic life.
We
So
do.
there's another question for you. So, how did sports play a role in your children's college
Hmm.
admissions?
In in their application or just in their lives?
No, it really did the sports really help them get in? I guess that's the question.
So I would have to say potentially with our youngest, but I think that it helped all of them because organized sports are so important. Like being part of a team really, I think, provides a lot of foundation and learning for kids. So I don't think it was their key element for getting into a school, but I think it was definitely part of all of their applications.
Wow. So they all played sports,
They did.
all of them
They did.
growing up.
They
Wow.
did.
Yeah, that is something I would say some families lack the understanding of that. The point is not really winning at a sport. It's really how you learn like a sportsmanship, right? Teamwork and
Mhm.
a lot of
Mhm.
things.
I mean, the one thing there is that you might have a child though that doesn't have any interest in sports, so you also can't
Yeah,
push that, right?
that's true. That's true. I agree. But then here's another question, and I'm not sure you will be able to answer this one. What about single parent, right? How do they guide their kids?
I think it has to. It's difficult. I'm sure. I haven't been in that position, so I don't necessarily have that perspective. But I think the single parents I know are really close with their offspring because they are together. I do think that um, there are some challenges whether if someone's a single parent and working 2 jobs to support a family, that's going to have a different interaction or a different way of interacting than someone who is in a 2-parent role. And yeah.
Yeah, all I can say is that it's way harder for a single parent to
Right.
do. I really think it takes two to raise kids. One parent it's just twice as hard.
It's definitely hard, but I think there can be such a close connection between.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, there's no fight between the two parents, right? Makes it easier that way.
That's
Uh,
true.
yeah.
That's so
Uh,
funny.
so okay, I guess I'm sure some folks here want to know, hey, what's the secret source to get your 3 sons into Harvard, right? What would you consider the contributing factor or factors?
Um, I would have to say that all 3 boys worked really hard in academically, and they also had very strong passions. And when they set about to do their college application, it really was authentic and it represented them. So every piece of that application really showed who they were as individuals. And I think that is the key.
So as far as their passion development, did you and your husband guide them early on? Like, did you do any assessment, or did it just happen naturally?
I feel like it happened naturally for them, but then we supported them, right?
Mhm.
So as I said before, Matthew was a lead singer in a band, and they cut a CD, and they would do, and TJ also was in a band and sang, and we all supported that. Like, my 80-year-old mother-in-law went to rock concerts, right? And
Wow.
which is pretty
To show
incredible
support for her grandson.
to support, right? To hear that.
Wow.
And I think that's important, right?
Wow. Mm. Yeah. What about their essays? Did you mess with their essays?
Mm-mm. We read them and we cried. But and we did, like, we might give them a comment, like, say, oh, that doesn't make sense, you need to go back to that, or I don't understand this piece, or the flow doesn't work. But their essays really were from them. But we did read them, and we did, and they
Did you
also
like
had counselors at school and teachers at school.
okay. Okay. Did you review their application before they submitted?
No, because each of their schools did that.
Okay. That's true. Yeah, private schools do a really good job
Right.
of that.
Right.
Yeah. And then here's another question from the audience pre-submitted.
Okay.
What are the 3 tips you would share with other parents? 3.
3.
Yes.
For what age? For looking at college?
That's true. They didn't specify. I would say don't limit yourself. I know this is really about college application, but think about it, right? You need to start early.
Right. I guess communication and show your love for your kids. I think that's so important, and it's also something that they'll take with them into their other relationships, and also to work hard academically. I think academics are really important. Reading, writing, and mathematical skills, science, they're going to take you so far.
Actually, that also reminded me. I had another question, a follow-up question in terms of communications. So really, how did you communicate with your children?
Well,
so I guess did you view yourself more like their peer, or like I'm your mom, you listen to me?
No. I mean, that is one thing I think that is important, is that I am not their best friend. I don't want to be their best friend, but I am their mother, and I want to always be able to talk with them openly and honestly about how they're feeling. So I think that is a definite distinction.
Okay. So I know you have 4 children. Did you have any did you play favoritism?
Jill, they would say I do, but I don't.
Okay, I see.
We have a running joke in the family, but no.
You love them.
And I'm not going to say.
Yeah. Okay, you can tell me in private.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, and there's a question actually. We can both answer that. What is the SAT test? When will you take that?
So I think it's important actually to take the SAT test earlier than a lot of people suggest. I think that fall of junior year is a good time to take it, and to maybe study for the test during that summer before junior year, because that junior spring, I think, is such a good time to start building that college list or looking at colleges, like going on that college visit spring break. A lot of times the schools suggest going on college visits in the summer, and I don't necessarily like that because I like to see colleges when there's students there. And one of the things we did on our college visits was if we knew someone at the school, we always tried to connect with them, have coffee, go to a class, whatever it might be, because really it's that peer-to-peer information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I guess this person asked, what is ACT test? That is a standardized test that a lot of colleges require or recommend for students to take during high school.
Okay.
And then here's a hard question for you. Did your children have conflicts with you and your husband as teenagers? You know, how they were like rebellious?
Yes, of course. No family is perfect. And, you know, you're always going to have those ups and downs. One of the things that we firmly believe, and I still believe actually, and I would say this even for any of my friends' kids, if they were ever at a party or whatnot and needed to be picked up, we would pick them up, no questions asked. That being said, you're not, as a parent, you're not going to condone, you know, behavior that you don't necessarily agree with. The other thing when they were younger, and I don't know if everyone's going to laugh at this, but I don't like video games. And so one thing we never had was a what are they, PlayStation or an Xbox?
Okay, yeah.
We still don't have that. And I have to say that's one of our biggest fights ever with the older two boys. They really wanted one. And they couldn't understand why I wouldn't give in, or Tom. And Tom was, my husband actually probably would have more than I would have, but he let me like keep that line. And I'll never forget one Christmas we did, I caved and we were going to go out and buy it. We bought it. And then that night I was like, no, I can't. And we took it back. So they never had one. The only thing when the Wii came out, we did end up, but I still wouldn't buy it. So all four kids put their allowance money together and they bought it, and I wouldn't buy a game. So like they bought, you know, Dance Dance Revolution or whatever. It was. So they had to buy their games. And that was the only thing we had. And that wasn't until they were in high school, the older ones, I think.
I guess back then there was no such thing as smartphone. Did they have a cell phone?
They did. Because of sports, it was just easier, and activities. And the boys did, both sang, and they had athletics and music, and our oldest did Odyssey of the Mind, and actually our second oldest, all four kids did Odyssey of the Mind, which is another program, and robotics. So with everybody's crazy schedules, we did.
Yeah, but it was those flip
They were those
phones,
flip
right?
phones.
Yeah, that was not a big deal. They could only make phone calls and text each other.
Now it would be really difficult because everyone has smartphones, right?
Exactly.
So,
and here's actually a question for you. So how did you limit their screen time?
I think we limited it when they were younger, but not as much when they were in high school, because it's hard to limit because they were doing work, you know, so much work on a computer, right?
Exactly. So, yeah. As long as you had a general idea of what kind of websites, right? Access to, yeah.
And they were honestly so busy that
you didn't have time for like a computer games and such.
No, they did, but it wasn't as much of an issue for us.
Okay, I see. That's good. Yeah, you kept them busy, right? Involved in other things. Speaking of which, here's one area somebody asked you, did your kids do community service? If so, what kind of community service did they do?
Yeah, they all have done community service. With the younger two, Kate was in National Charity League, so she had community service through that. Christopher, we were involved in Boys Teen Charity, which is another community service group, and it's for boys age 7th grade through 12th. And I've always worked in nonprofits, so just naturally, as a family, we've done different. Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
I see. Yeah. There's a question, how many times can you take ACT? Does it affect your GPA?
It doesn't affect your GPA,
Right.
but the SAT, I wouldn't. I think they say the maximum really is 3, because as you start to take it more times, you're not getting the return.
Yeah, I guess it could negatively affect your GPA if you spend all your time, right, preparing for ACT and you neglect your coursework. So it could actually negatively affect that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, Michelle, sorry to interrupt. That's the key. I think that's a key to tell people, is that really the GPA and your class work is more important than the SAT. Like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not worth sacrificing your GPA to boost your SAT.
Not at all.
Actually, here's another related question, right? What GPA did your kids have to get into Harvard? Probably straight A, I would think, right? 4.0.
Yeah, they had.
Were they like valedictorian or salutatorian of their class?
So the school they went to didn't rank.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, but still.
The other thing for people to remember is that our oldest is 28. So, and college admissions has definitely changed from the time that he was applying to now.
Has become more and more competitive.
It's more and more competitive.
Yeah, yeah.
Michelle, one thing I want to go back to actually, and I just thought of this, and one thing all 4 of our kids did were exchanges with families abroad. And
in high school?
In actually, our oldest started exchanging with a French family when he was 12.
Wow.
He went to Paris alone. It was a friend of a friend had a son who was 12, and they wanted to exchange with an American family, and they wanted his English to be stronger, and they started exchanging when they were 12. And then Matthew went to Spain, and Kate went to France. It was another friend of a friend. And Christopher is the only one. He took Spanish, and we didn't. He did some international travel through a different program, but I think that family exchanges can be a lower cost way to have expose your kids to different countries and cultural differences.
So how long was the exchange?
Well, they went in the summers. It was more ongoing, right? Where
so just one time. Oh, then they would go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is incredible.
Different years, and actually, yeah.
See, it's interesting. My daughter exchanged to Germany. It was through the high school exchange program. She studied German during high school, and so she loved it. Wow, that is something.
And we always took exchange students. You know how people always kind of ask, we have an exchange program, and we would always take people. So we also had those experiences. And then like I think Matthew was through Rotary, so Rotary also
Yes, Rotary, yeah.
that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my husband was a Rotary club
Mhm.
president, and I am very familiar with that exchange program. That is really good. So here's one more question for you. Can you choose any major in college, or let me see, give it trying to understand the question. Carol, do you want to unmute and turn on your camera? Because I'm not sure what you mean here. It says, can you choose any major in college, or do they give you tops to choose based on your high school class? I'm not sure what she was
Who
trying to say.
at the?
Do you see this question
I
from
don't.
Crystal? Crystal, can you choose? Crystal, are you on the line? Do you want to like unmute yourself and turn on your camera and ask this question? So I guess what she was trying to say is, when you apply for college, can you just choose any major, or the colleges assign your major based on your high school, what class you took in high school? I think that's what she meant.
Okay, so when you apply to college, you there are some schools, especially like the larger public schools, like the University of California systems, where you do actually choose majors in that application process. And some majors are more impacted than others, so you need to think about that. For example, engineering. But then with the smaller liberal arts schools, you actually don't pick your major until usually your sophomore year. So it really is dependent on the schools that you go to. But when you're applying to a school that does have majors, you really do need to think about what you're putting down, because a lot of times you also have a more difficult time switching majors.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In theory, you can choose any major the college
Right.
offers.
Exactly.
But in reality,
Exactly.
yeah.
And the other thing to think about is that there's a difference between a liberal arts curriculum or a school that might have more of a business focus, where they have accounting or other types of majors, nursing, even more of a
That's true.
pre-professional program.
Yeah, that's true. And then really, I know we only have 5 minutes left. My final question for you is that what is your advice for high schoolers?
I think that high schoolers need to really follow their passions. That's one. But also, I think we need to take some of the stress of um, out of high school. This last year has been really difficult for so many people, and I think we need to realize that, and really show empathy with the kids and what they're going through. That being said, I do think they need to follow their passions and work up to their potential.
Yeah,
So
that's true. Two
I
more
hope
questions
that.
have come in. Yes, that's good. Also, I guess kind of one is a follow-on question about college major, like how difficult is it to change your major or do a double major in college?
Um, Once again, that really depends on the school. Like some schools are harder to change your major than others. And you have to realize that if you do change your major, you might need to take another semester or quarter or a year to complete whatever the new requirements are for the major that you're moving to.
Yeah, that's very true. It really depends on the college. And the major too, right?
Right.
I figure it's harder to change into computer science than probably to history. Um, and here is the, okay, you mentioned the passion multiple times. What if the students still have not found their passion in high school? What do they do?
How about instead of passions, we use the word interests? Because everybody has different interests, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that might be easier for people to identify with than passion.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that, my company to the top has a tool. We do this 4-part assessments, which can help them figure out, their interest.
Right. And their abilities, or say their personalities, and how that drives
Exactly.
that. Right.
Yeah, yeah. And here's a politically incorrect question for you. So you need to be brutally honest with us. I'm
Okay.
sure you've heard about the lawsuit against Harvard's discrimination against Asian students. You
Right.
as a white lady, so what
Right.
is your impression of Asian students? Be brutally honest.
I the same as any student, right?
Are there any stereotypes?
I'm sure everybody has stereotypes. I have a stereotype, right? But I really think the key is to look at everybody, no matter what they look like, for who they are, right? Not what they look like. So no, I
think
I recognize we all have bias,
I think
it's implicit bias.
I think the deeper question from that question is really, you've shared a wonderful advice, but of course, will that really relate to Asian students, right? If we follow this,
Right.
we have the same results.
I get that question. And that's something I can't control, because each institution has their own institutional priorities, and they're setting, what their needs are. And one thing I have said to all of the students that I'm working with, as a career counselor and a college counselor, is that imagine a box of perfect oranges, and that admissions officer needs to pick 3 oranges out of the box. They're going to pick their 3, but that doesn't mean that the other oranges in the box are any less perfect than the ones they picked. And I think that's what kids need to really understand. And where you go to college isn't necessarily going to be who you become as you grow into your career.
Yeah, that's very true. Just because you did not get into Harvard, it doesn't make you a loser. In fact, I read somewhere Harvard can really get 3 classes from that applicants pool. So they couldn't admit all of them.
They can't admit all of them.
Yeah.
I see the question about what careers the kids are doing now. And yes, so our oldest is working at a company called Tube Science, which uses film and video for advertising. So yes, he's still related to that, to film and video. And then our second oldest is in business school. So he's working this summer in LA, and he wants to work in the music industry. So he is definitely still in that same area, although he was in private equity in New York before business school. And then our third, she is incredibly passionate about women's issues and community health. And she's actually working in development at Mass General Hospital, focused on community health and women's issues and health equity. And then our youngest is still in college.
So Christopher, right? What is his college major?
He doesn't have to declare until next year, but he was leaning towards computer science, and potentially might do applied math and economics. He's not sure right yet.
Oh, okay. I see.
So,
yeah. Wow. Okay. I guess our time is up. Anything else you want to share with our audience here before we finish? And meanwhile, let me share my our contact if folks want to contact us. Actually, the other thing I was going to do is to put our company website in there. Yeah.
You there?
Yeah. So.
And I think there was one last question about if Harvard prepared them for the job market. I think every college can help prepare a student for the job market, actually.
Yeah, I would say
experience.
Harvard doesn't need to help as much. Just the name alone is the biggest help.
But I do think that just having that college experience is important, and it could be in so many different ways, right?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I mean, that's actually your four children's success story did not end at getting to Harvard, but they were able to follow their passion after college. And that is really amazing. That is really amazing. You've done a great job as a mother. And
they've done a great job.
Oh, I'm going to give you most of the credit right now. But thank you so much, Carol. And we really appreciate it. And for the folks on the line, if you need to get hold of Carol, if you need her counseling, please contact my company and we'll set you up. And she will be able to have like a 30 minutes consultation with high school seniors, rising seniors, when you are ready to apply for college. Right, Carol, you're available.
Yes, I would love to.
Okay, okay. Yeah. All right, I guess that is.
All right, well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Carol, and thank you everyone for attending today. And our next webinar is a week from today. I forgot. It's July 26th. We are going to have a webinar with admissions officers from Rice University and Tulane University.